was it with NASCAR schedule? Honestly, though, like NASCAR schedules have to be one of the most greatest things that could actually do this. But could NASCAR tracks just go a little bit worldwide? I think they would actually do that. That would actually be pretty amazing. So, why don't we start off head first? Now, we're going to go to our way, the Bowman Gray Stadium.
That's right, people. Home of the Cookout Clash. Now, NASCAR had started doing this thing first race of the season, but I think it would make a great actual circuit for the actual first start of the Clash of the 2028 season.
So yeah, the Bowman Gray Stadium will make a great race for the Clash. Now let's move on to the Daytona 500.
So yeah, always NASCAR would race on the Daytona International Super Speedway. That's why I called it. Because it's like tall like a super speedway, so yeah, it would make the great running of the Daytona 500, of the Great American Race. So yeah, that would be the second race of the season. So let's move on to Canada, which will be the third race of the season. So NASCAR has raced at Canada between 2007 to 2019. Now I think it would make a great race for the Cup Series to return back to Canada. But for the Cup Series, though, so for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Canada, I think it would be known as the Discount Tire Grand Prix. So yeah, it would be the third race of the season. Now we're going to move on back to the United States for Homestead, Miami. So yeah, NASCAR would actually head towards the Homestead, Miami Speedway for the actual iconic Bass Pro Shops 500, powered by Ford. It would make a great event for the fourth race of the season. Of course, we cannot forget the Circuit of the Americas, or COTA for short. But instead of the Auto Trader or the Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix, it would become known as the Gainbridge 200 for the NASCAR Cup Series in 2028. So it would be like the fifth race of the season. Now we're going to head towards our way to Virginia. Not Martinsville, though, but quite the opposite. Virginia International Raceway. Now, they hosted up the Can-Am Pro Series since the late early 2010s, but I think it would make a great event for the actual GoDaddy 500, or no, not the GoDaddy 300, powered by WeatherTech. Now, ever since that the NASCAR Can-Am Pro Series had raced here, and it also did some testing here as well. Now let's move on to the seventh race of the season, where we're going to head towards to the Grand Prix of Cleveland, where the Champ Car World Series used to race there back in the late 2000s. Now, since the 2000s, the Champ Car World Series had raced it at the airport nearby Cleveland, Ohio, which might be a great event for the NASCAR Cup Series to race there for the Mobile One 150, powered by Monster Energy, which might look great for the NASCAR Cup Series to race at Cleveland for the very first time. Now we're going to move on to this next race at the Texas Motor Speedway. So the NASCAR Cup Series would go to the Texas Motor Speedway for the actual major event, for the actual Coca-Cola 400, powered by Bass Pro Shops. So after Texas, NASCAR would actually head towards to Germany at the Nürburgring for the actual iconic. It would be for the NASCAR Goodyear 200. Okay, so that's like a reference to the NASCAR Goodyear 500 from the exhibition race back at Australia. But we are going to head towards to Australia, but that would be in the next couple of weeks in the year of 2028. So we're going to head towards to the next race after Nürburgring. So after the Nürburgring race, NASCAR would head towards to the Dover International Speedway. But why is it international? I mean, it's not like that IndyCar raced there. Well, they used to back in the 90s, but if they would actually race there, NASCAR would actually head towards to the actual Dover International Speedway for the Waste Management 400, powered by interstate batteries. So after Dover, NASCAR would head towards to, in the United Kingdom, at Silverstone, for the Bass Pro Shops Grand Prix, powered by Coca-Cola. Of course, we can't forget the most iconic Las Vegas Motor Speedway for the Pennzoil 400, presented by Jiffy Lube, which will be another that they would head back into the United States for after Silverstone. Of course, with Las Vegas, you gotta include the Bristol Motor Speedway, which I hope they could actually bring it back in the most iconic red and white colors on the track. Actually, if it was like blue and white, that would be an awesome color for Bristol Motor Speedway. So I hope we actually do that in 2028. Okay, so now if you want to head towards to a road course after Bristol, you've got to check out the Idaho Raceway. But I know it looks like the track is fictional, but if it was like this in 2028, they would have to race on the actual full circuit of the Grand Prix of Idaho. So they would actually race here for the Idaho Grand Prix of NASCAR. And so now NASCAR would head back to Worldwide again, but this time they would go to a different IndyCar track where they used to go during the late 90s and most of the 2000s and early 2010s. We've got to include the actual iconic Surfers Paradise Street Circuit, which IndyCar used to race here long ago. We're gonna kick it back again at the Sonoma Raceway for the Toyota Save Mart 350. As always, so they would actually have to race here right after Australia for this one. So we're gonna head down towards to Hampton, Georgia for the Menards 400 at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. And it'll actually feature the Penske drivers driving in the Menards vehicles. But do you think that Joey Logano, Austin Cindric, and Ryan Blaney all three of those drivers will drive the Menards vehicles, but even a part-time Penske driver, which could drive the Penske number 27 Menards Pepsi car, driven by part-time rookie Cletus McFarland, driving in the 27 Team Penske Menards / Pepsi, which might be a great idea for Cletus McFarland to race in the Cup Series. So after Atlanta, you've got to kick out to the TT Circuit in Austin, which is the cathedral of motorcycle racing. Even back in 2007, when the Champ Car World Series had traveled all the way towards to Dutch, but at least you gotta include a Brazilian track. That's right. NASCAR will actually head towards to the Circuit Interlagos for the NASCAR Grand Prix at Brazil for the first time. So after Brazil, NASCAR would head towards to the Watkins Glen International. Of course, always the Go Bowling at the Glen. But in 2028, what I would think they would call this, they would actually call this the STP at the Glen. But you know what? If you want to actually see the race go on at North Wilkesboro, the All-Star race will have to do. So they would actually head back to the North Wilkesboro Speedway for the All-Star race. But this time a few part-time drivers have to go, including Cletus McFarland, who could try to do his first Cup Series debut in 2028. So after the North Wilkesboro All-Star weekend, NASCAR would head towards to the Tennessee countryside of Nashville for the Ally 400 presented by Kroger. So this will be the greatest 2028 schedule of all time. But you know what? If you want to see your very favorite driver doing a throwback start, we have got to head towards to the legendary track of the Darlington Raceway for the Goodyear 400. So, what I would think for throwback weekends, I'm gonna say like the Richard Childress cars will take a throwback to their very first Cup Series starts around that time. But while the actual Joe Gibbs drivers, they would have to drive the actual legendary cars from their favorite drivers of the past, or even something cooler, they would have to take throwbacks of drivers of the 50s. But while NASCAR, however, they haven't returned to Road America since after the 2022 season. So why not, if NASCAR could return to Road America for the WeatherTech 350, powered by HendrickCars.com. So that's right, NASCAR will try to make its return to Road America in 2028. But you know what? We've got to include the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez for the Mexico weekend of 2028, for the Viva Mexico 250, for the actual upcoming NASCAR Mexico weekend. So I heard that NASCAR is going to return to Mexico this year. But you know what? If you want to actually include Road America, you've got to include Road Atlanta. Now, NASCAR hasn't returned to Road Atlanta since the Canon Pro Series had went here since 2013, while the NASCAR Xfinity Series had raced there since the late 1980s. Now, people have heard that Xfinity will no longer sponsor the Grand National Division. Probably NASCAR would call it the NASCAR Coca-Cola Grand National Series. But if you're at Road Atlanta and you're actually heading towards to the streets of Chicago, the NASCAR Cup Series is gonna head towards to the NASCAR Chicago Street Course for the Loop 101. So that's right, they'll actually head back into it, but they said that the NASCAR isn't gonna go fully electric in that time. So yeah. But you know what? If you want to actually include, you've got to include the historical Indianapolis Motor Speedway, for the Brickyard 400 will be the first race of the playoffs. Now, NASCAR has returned there since like a year ago, but it would be a great event for the NASCAR Cup Series to have the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as the first race of the playoffs. Now we're going to head down to Texas RC. The Texas RC, otherwise known as the Texas Roval Course. Now, the American Le Mans Series had came there since between 2000 to 2001, but if NASCAR would have actually raced it there at that time, they would have actually had their chance to race on the Texas Motor Speedway Road Course. Now, they would actually have to call this the WRF 400 at the Roval. That's right, it'll be NASCAR's first time at the Texas Motor Speedway Roval. But after Texas, you've got to include the Kansas Speedway. So they'll actually hit the HendrickCars.com 200 for their third race of the playoffs. So they would actually have Cletus McFarland race back at Kansas for his part-time Cup Series debut in 2028. So he would actually have to race in the Team Penske number 27. So in 2028, for the fourth race of the playoffs, NASCAR Cup Series will make its secondary event at the North Wilkesboro Speedway, which could be deemed known as the Napa Auto Parts 300. Why that name event? What about this race is so distinguished that it has to be the number 300? But I don't know. It could be an actual great race, and that's just about it. But what I would think that if Danica Patrick could really freaking make her Cup Series return at North Wilkesboro for the number 9 Hendrick sponsorship. But yeah, I think it might work for this one. Or even Kyle Busch could try to make his return back to Hendrick Motorsports. But if you want to include another road course for the 2028 season, known as the fifth race of the playoffs, then you've got to check out the Pikes Peak International Raceway road course. I don't know, if NASCAR would actually make its newest return at the Pikes Peak International Raceway, since the Truck Series and Busch Series had raced here back in the 90s and 2000s though, but actually it would make such a great event for the NASCAR Cup Series to return back at the Pikes Peak International Raceway. Now, you're probably thinking that the Las Vegas would only have this one race, but you're definitely wrong. If the NASCAR Cup Series could actually race at Las Vegas under the lights for the actual most iconic, the Sparco 300, presented by GoDaddy.com. Why that actual good idea for this one? But actually, I think it would be a great idea for NASCAR to return back for the actual NASCAR race at Las Vegas under the lights, which might actually work for an actual idea for NASCAR to do that again. So how about this? After Las Vegas, NASCAR would actually have only one race at the Talladega Superspeedway for the Wendy's 400. Now, why is that such a great name for this one? But I don't know. It might actually become the greatest 500-mile racing. That's about it. But around the same time, NASCAR would actually head back into the Martinsville Speedway for the actual Xfinity 500. Or no. But if Xfinity is actually leaving the Xfinity Series, probably it would be called the Long John Silver's 500. Now, that might actually become a great event for NASCAR and Long John Silver's to actually make the greatest event at Martinsville Speedway, known as the Long John Silver's 500. Now, that might actually become in handy for the NASCAR Cup Series to be named like that. So we're going to head down towards to the championship, which will actually be at the most historical track of all time, the NASCAR Championship race at Monza. But if the United States Auto Club can actually race at the Monza Oval in a different direction, why not NASCAR? They can actually try to race at the Monza Oval, right? I mean, it's not like Max Pappas and I think all their NASCAR drivers had raced it on Monza before. But actually, those were like attempts for NASCAR to race on Monza. But I don't think so. They would have actually raced that long ago, but they just didn't race on Monza. If you really wanted to see the actual NASCAR race versus championship at Monza, you've really got to check out the track. But I know it's home to Formula One and the Italian Grand Prix, which NASCAR and the Monza Oval, that might be great for NASCAR fans.
So there you have it, the NASCAR Dream Schedule of 2028. So if you want to see more, what do you think that NASCAR should actually race in the next couple of years? But that's fine. I'm actually going to keep on watching NASCAR if I actually have my HJC helmet, which I will show you guys. Now I know that mine has like stickers all over, but this is what I always wanted to see if NASCAR could actually allow if you just put in like actual stickers like this is my only helmet, but it's for motorcycles only, but it wouldn't actually allow it if NASCAR really did allow HJC helmets. So thanks for watching.
On my mini fix, put your place against up in the air. We be cruising to the city like we just don't care.